Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're taking a look at a fairly controversial fanfic, Star Trek Conquest. Star Trek Conquest is a Star Wars versus Star Trek fanfic. Probably indeed one of the best, but also one of the more, shall we say, annoying. This is a well-written fanfiction, but, and this is a big hairy bum, it is indeed entirely biased against Star Trek. And when I say biased, I really mean biased. This is where it's basically the writer loves the Empire and thinks it can win in all ways and does his level best to denigrate everything Star Trek. So if you love the Empire, well, get to fapping, because this indeed is the greatest Empire fapfic that was ever written. So, what do we get? We get Star Wars fighting Star Trek. So how does that even happen? As is so often with these types of crossovers, a wild wormhole appears. But, unlike with some of the more lesser written fanfics, it at least utilizes some canon to actually justify it. What do you got? You got a wormhole created by Q that allows the Empire to invade the Federation. And what's actually pretty cool is it's one of those fanfics that actually tries to use characterization and generally succeeds very well so long as it's talking about Imperator personnel, not Star Trek personnel. So, what we have is Captain Picard as one of the major characters, but we also have Admiral Kir Kanos from the Crimson Empire comics. Q, of course, was messing with old Kir in the Star Wars universe and Captain Picard in the Star Trek universe. So what ends up happening is the Empire finds this wormhole and, of course, begins expanding through it. And, the Federation sends some ships, and not much altogether happens. The Empire doesn't immediately invade, and the Federation can't really do altogether that much. But, as must happen, of course, somebody does something stupid. The Romulans decide to attack the space station on the Imperial side. Essentially, to make the wormhole stable, the Empire had to create two space stations to stabilize it. And, of course, the Romulans want to destroy it, quite rightly. They, of course, destroy the space station, but it doesn't do all that much damage. And like in Star Trek DS9, their entire fleet is destroyed. And that's when the Empire begins invading, with quite a few starships, because you have to remember the Empire is far larger than the Federation is in Star Trek. The Federation in the 24th century, which this fanfic is set, is only 150 member worlds, whereas the Galactic Empire has millions of member worlds. So yeah, if all the Imperial Star Destroyers did was just ram into ships, yeah, they're still gonna win. So what ends up happening is they invade, and the Federation is able to get 100 ships, and those 100 ships are only able to destroy 4 Star Destroyers. Now, this might seem kind of bad for the Federation, but this really isn't anti-Federation bias at all. Because in all reality, Federation starships would be vastly weaker than Imperial starships, primarily because Federation starships are far smaller than Imperial starships. One of the largest Federation starships is the Big E, and the Big E is vastly dwarfed by an Imperial Class 1 Star Destroyer. So how does the Empire even work in this fanfic? I mean, weren't they defeated? What, is Admiral Thrawn showing up? Nope. The Empire in this universe was reconstituted by an evil Anakin Solo, which is actually kind of amazing. I believe this fanfic was written long before Anakin Solo's canon death, and long before Jacen Solo became Darth Caedus. It's just kind of funny that the writer thought that Anakin would be the Emperor replacement. And, well, Anakin is a cool character, and I'm actually glad to see that he actually got to be evil overlord versus Jacen. Anakin is the Emperor, and his 2 Sith apprentices are Jaina and Jacen. And, of course, the Empire is reconstituted, and they got the Death Star 3, they got the Eclipse back, they got the Galaxy Gun back, they got all that back. Because Anakin is actually competent, whereas everyone else was incompetent. So how did Anakin even become evil? Well, it's sort of a reverse Batman. In this universe, Han and Leia were killed, and no one wanted to prosecute their killers. At which time, Anakin decided to kill the killers, and he, of course, became evil Batman. which is actually a pretty cool character motivation. All of this is great. But once they start kicking the crap out of the Federation, then you can really see some anti-Federation bias going on. Of course, the Federation immediately starts to lose, and lose bad. A Rebel Alliance ship actually makes it through the wormhole during all of these attacks. And of course, immediately, the Federation tries to take it over and fails. Because of course they do. Then the Federation President has to be killed because the Federation President for some reason doesn't want to fight the evil genocidal Galactic Empire. Because reasons. And there's even an admiral on the Federation side named Halsey, who of course is a hothead and immediately gets himself killed. Then it gets worse, ladies and gentlemen. You then have beloved characters killed off left and right. Because, once again, remember, you got the Empire, they got all the tech on their side. They got the fucking Death Star showing up. And the Death Star immediately, of course, hits Earth. Doesn't destroy it, but destroys Starfleet Academy, because screw you, Star Trek. And, screw you, Star Trek, Reginald Barclay is shot in the head by a stormtrooper. Now, that might not necessarily be bad. Like, what if Reginald Barclay's, like, shooting people with phasers? Nope. He's just cowering in the corner going like, please don't shoot me. And of course, the stormtrooper shoots him. Brilliant! Brilliant. And it just kind of goes on like that. The Empire shows up and immediately stomps everything. No one even stands a chance, even if it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. The Borg are immediately wiped out. And this is where I've got another bloody bone to pick with the writer when it comes to how they portray the Federation. The Federation is, of course, defeated. And when it's defeated, a lot of the planets just, like, secede from the Federation. You know, Vulcan is, like, the first planet to secede from the Federation when the Federation Starfleet is defeated. It's like, come on! Then Picard joins the Imps. This, of course, is not that bad because, well, he joins the Imps and uses the Imps to destroy the Borg. Okay, that's fine. Then you gotta get the fetish stuff in. So, Jaina Solo decides to take a liking to old Cappy because, you know, Captain Picard has got that bald head that drives the ladies wild. And, of course, Jaina Solo rapes him. Now you might be thinking, like, wait a minute, Captain Picard's, like, really a badass, right? How can he be raped, right? Well, yes, you can indeed rape males, and guess what? He gets raped. He, of course, is raped by Jaina because Jaina uses the Jedi mind trick on him to have him fuck her. Great. And she gets pregnant and gives him the kid. Now, I'm not going to go all Megtail on you and say, like, that's terrible, because honestly, who would you rather raise that kid? Jaina Solo, an insane rapist, or Captain Picard, a bald-head paragon? I'm going with Captain Baldy, if I do say so myself. So ultimately, you've got some scenes in the book where the Federation rebels try to fight the Empire. There's a cool scene with Riker blowing up an Imperial installation and then getting beamed up by a Federation science vessel. It's some pretty good stuff, and it all culminates in a final battle against the Death Star. Essentially, they want to try to close the wormhole so no more Imperial reinforcements can reach the Alpha Quadrant. Well, this is yet another one of those big middle fingers to the Star Trek universe. We learn that the Federation Starfleet has all pretty much gone Imperial. We also learn that the Klingons have all pretty much gone Imperial, because everybody loves the Empire! But of course, they fight against the Death Star. You got fucking Captain Sisko there, you got everybody there fighting them, right? Well, they pretty much lose, but they're able to close the wormhole. One of the reasons they lose is for a really, really stupid reason. They almost destroy the Death Star. But when the Death Star starts shooting off lifeboats, the Federation captains don't like blowing them out of space, even though they are, of course, enemy combatants that will, of course, try to attack the Federation once they get another ship. And then, the Federation captains decide to start shooting at the rebellious ships. Because, well, when you're fighting for survival, you want to fight your own allies, too, because reasons. And, of course, they have a scene where Captain Sisko says, "Target one of the rebel ships and stop them from destroying the innocent lifeboats of Imperial combatants." Yeah, once again, giant middle finger to the Federation Starfleet. Now, The story ends with Captain Picard and his crew getting sucked through that wormhole just before it's destroyed. And of course, they go through both time and space and land on Coruscant 30,000 years in the past. And it's implied that they become the humans in the Star Wars galaxy. It's a pretty good story, but for the constant middle fingers to the Federation Starfleet and the Federation as a whole. Every Star Trek character that the writer doesn't like either gets killed off or gets raped. The story is almost perfect. Had they not thrown the middle finger at so many great and classic characters, it would probably be one of the greatest fanfics ever written. The whole Picard rape thing, I think, was utterly unnecessary. Now, some might actually try to say that it isn't a rape, but in all reality, when someone is brainwashed and meant to engage in sexual activities against their will, that's a rape. It doesn't matter if it's a female on male, it's still a rape. And it really took me out of the story. I did not like that at all. I didn't like the fact that the Klingons turned on the Federation. I didn't like the fact that Vulcan was like the first planet to leave the Federation. I didn't like the fact that fucking Barclay got shot in the back of the head by a stormtrooper. Ultimately, if you love the Empire, you'll love this story. If you like both Star Trek and Star Wars equally like me, you will find this story to be really, really annoying. It's good enough to piss you off, but that's about it. At the end of the day, do I recommend it? Well, I recommend it only if you can ignore the whole Picard rape and ignore the whole denigration of the Federation. I don't regret reading it, but I do find that the writer could have been a little more impartial in his handling of the Federation side of the story. This is an example of a fanfic where I think the writer just had a little too much personal bias in the story itself, and it definitely takes it down a few pegs. At the end of the day, this is not an egregious fanfic. This is nothing anywhere near something like, say, 50 Shades of Grey. But I would say that the writer definitely needed to remove a few elements before it could actually become utter perfection. And so, I am Generallotz, wishing you good Warhammer, the Dark Times, and good Enduring the Flames of War, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed my review of Star Trek Conquest, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you these fanfic reviews.